Yeah, I mean, there's a definite trickle down effect, even from the commercial end of it. I mean, if that all kind of falls to hell, maybe one of two ways. Where do people go and where do they put their money? They might put it in residential real estate, and or they just take it out of everything. But I just don't see that happening. I mean, in residential, it just, to
No.
me, to me, I mean, you still have to have somewhere to live. I mean, for companies and stuff like that, they can always send their employees home and work out of their house. And I mean, a lot of them still do that. I met with two people the other day. They both work out of their home. They've been working out of their home ever since COVID started. And it's totally fine. So that kind of more lies the issue. I mean, they figured that works. And it's good for some companies.
Well, just like anything else, Chris, in life, like let's say you and I own a big commercial building together, and you own 70% of it and I own the other 30%. Now we have somebody the bank that comes along that says, hey boys, you've only got 50% equity in this property. We need you to have 70% equity, or we have a higher interest rate, or we're going to call your note due. So what we as owners of that building can do is we can either, refinance like they're talking about, we can default, or we can get really creative and put different positions in that company where Chris and I might be able to give up some of our equity, for an example, at a discount to get other cash investors to infuse cash into that building, where I give up 30% of my 30%, but I raise $1 million that all of a sudden can go towards that buy down with that bank. So now I'm not the only player in there. Now there's 3 players or 4 players or 5 players. I think you're going to see a lot of that happening. And then there's going to be rules that come with that, where if there's another escalator that comes along with a bank, and all of a sudden, the person that is investing in as the angel investor, sometimes they call, will come in there and they'll actually be able to buy out the original people at discounts. And so it really comes down to where I think there's 2 ways to look at this. Doom and gloom, get your rain umbrella, it's going to rain. Or say, hey, let's get some buckets and collect this rain because it's worth a lot of money. There's opportunities coming. And I look at it as this will be one of the greatest opportunities we've seen to secure some of these properties, because if those banks have to liquidate those properties at pennies on the dollar, here's what's interesting and sad at the same time. The way the feds have positioned banks in this world, in our country, a lot of times when you're a business owner, Chris and I that want to build an office building, we don't go to the big banks that take all the deposits on Fridays, right? You know who you are. You go there and they have a checking account, they have their business accounts. And we go to the little bank. Well, the little bank is the one that's financing our big commercial building. The problem is that they're putting the strains on these little banks. Little banks are going to disappear on us, guys, and nobody's going to be able to lend. And we're going to have a country that could become very difficult to get a loan or whatever. So we have to protect these banks. And I don't know. I think if I was anybody at the Minnesota state level of these banks that don't lend back into the communities where they take deposits, I think there should be penalties for that. And so these banks that are taking in, I don't remember what the number is, but one of the biggest banks, we all know it, it has 2 names. And it literally has I don't remember how many billions of dollars per Friday being deposited. But they put zero money back into local business lending. They're not required to, so they don't. And so then all of a sudden you have all the majority of the money and the deposits being made into these big banks, and the little banks are not getting the deposits, but they're the ones that are taking all the strain and the stress of trying to finance these private deals. And anyway. I think it's going to be a big attack on little banks, to be honest with you, beyond just the consumer or whatever. But
yeah, I kind of sometimes think about this, and I remember the whole Y2K thing. I mean, we've been being told about ever since interest rate went up. We've been told about all the commercial loans that are going to go bankrupt and everything, and we thought they were all going to get bankrupt 2 years ago, really. Mm-hmm. And so now it's next year, and then it's the year before, and it's all this shit that constantly.
And guess what they'll do? They'll do some kind of federal stimulus that says, hey, commercial, we don't have to do this. We're going to roll it back to 3%, and everybody can keep their commercial, and then there's nothing to talk about.
Or BlackRock comes in and saves everyone and just buys everything out. I mean, it might be a little plan to do all that crap. So it's just kind of like, I think you got to just, I don't know. I mean, I'm not so sure I'm going to go buy a commercial property right now downtown Minneapolis and, put an 8% loan on it. But, I don't know. A lot of these.
I might buy but if I was an individual and I was investing into buy a fourplex and you live in one of the units for basically get an FHA loan on a fourplex, you can almost live for free your whole life and own that building. Yeah. And so there's some of those kind of things I think are really cool tools that as we've become a culture, especially in Minnesota, where people like apartments now. People are used to apartments. When I grew up, everybody lived in a single family home and there was only a couple apartments on the end of town. Well, now it's like, it's a lifestyle choice. People are like, I don't want to deal with the whatever. So they stay in apartments. I think different housing inventory styles